and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Mental Health, brought to you by Masiviwe. I'm your host. My name is Andile Maposa. The Masiviwe movement is a group of companies led by the Foundation for Professional Development, the FPD, working together with other companies to make sure that everyone is heard when it comes to mental health. In today's episode, we will be talking about men and mental health, and I'm joined by Tebogo Ramadiro, who's a counselor at SADAG, the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, an NGO which runs many of the mental health helplines and also does a lot around mental health education. Tebogo is also the head of the Substance Use Helpline. Welcome to you, Tebogo.
Hi, Andile. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for availing your time. I'm really excited to have you as we discuss men and mental health. And we're going to watch a short video titled Gents, Let's Talk. But before we do you see a good deal of men actually reaching out to the helpline? And what are some of the challenges they say they're facing?
I can say that we are making progress in terms of men reaching out to the helpline. Because when we usually look at our reports, we see that a lot of females are reaching out on behalf of the men. But now men are also coming out, they're making their voice being heard. So some of the challenges that we are getting is substance use disorder and also trauma. Some of them have gone through trauma. So it's encouraging to see men reaching out, actually making their voice to be heard.
Thank you so much for that, Tebogo. Let's just watch this short clip titled Gents, Let's Talk, and Tebogo and I will be back to have a discussion around the video.
Hi, everyone.
I never believed mental health is a real thing. I'm African. Never believed in that. What is depression? Stress. What is stress? Now I'm asking myself, can one person just wake up early in the morning feeling happy and just hang themselves? Definitely no. Then I started to dig, what is the issue? That's when I started to realize that mental issues are real.
You know, I grew up as an only child. I never knew my biological father until I was much older. So that brought about a lot of identity issues, you know, so I didn't really know how to articulate myself. I don't know how to be a guy.
We are a man. We don't cry. We don't cry. You know, you don't cry. To be a man, you need to act strong. Question is, if you're going through pains, where do you go? Because in your childhood, you used to cry. Today, whenever you're feeling pain, where do you take your pain if you don't cry?
One day I was sitting with my mother in the kitchen, I remember. So I told her exactly what I wrote and how I feel. You know, I'm not in a good place and I kind of feel like I'm stuck right now. My mom's a nurse, so she was a friend of hers who's a psychologist, and said, well, you want to see her? And I thought, oh yeah, that would be interesting.
When I grew up, I had this in mind, what is it that I need to change? This is the question that every man has. What is it that I have to change? What must I do? Because when you look left, somebody's excelling, right, somebody's excelling. You look at yourself, you feel like, you know what, there's nothing that I'm doing. It's a pressure on its own. I grew up with that mindset, with that attitude to say, Gindota, I'm a man, I must be strong. You know, that is the culture. But reality is saying it's okay to ask for help. Men have no one to talk to. It's so possible that a man can have 5 friends, but among the 5 friends, nobody that he can sit down with and talk reality. Go to taverns, they're drinking, it's okay, but do you vent out? Do you talk about serious issues? No, we only talk about pirates and chiefs. It ends there. Then I realized, no, let me do something for men. Let me just open up a space for men to vent out. The good part of a support group is that there's no leader. All of us, we talk because my strength is your weakness. Your weakness is my strength. Support group can be one of the tools to break the stigma within men, because that's one of the enemy that is killing us men, stigma.
You know, I had my own challenges with mental health and I started exploring different men's groups, and I trained with SADC, and that's how I got to start the first men's support group through SADC. For a lot of men, it's like, well, I don't have money to put on the table tonight. man, we're gonna go through like extreme lengths to try to get that money, but we don't communicate with our partner. But we are told as men that, hey, you're a man, you gotta go hunt, you gotta go gather, you know, you have to always have it figured out. And I think that's what puts men in this box. I think for men, if we could tap into those emotions a lot more, then we would have like less violence, right?
Like depression ngaphandle kwe-stress. So that means mangabe awungeke ube ne-solution to i-stress sakho, it can elevate ifike kuphi ku-depression.
And I think being mentally healthy, but to me it's all about being able to kind of put a word to how you're feeling, to look into your day to day and checking in on yourself. Okay, how do I feel this morning? You know,
I talk with a journal. I write down.
Everyone, not just men, everyone has a part to play in helping men at least get familiar with these tools, and then the language can be there. I think instead of shutting down, let's let men be more expressive and for the men to allow themselves to do that.
Speak out. Nobody will know you're inside the pit until you raise your hand and be like, guys, I'm here. Speak out, khuluma.
That was a short video titled Gents Let's Talk. It's part of the Masiviwe Let's Talk series. You can find that on www.masiviwe.org.za and you head over to their library section. Let's just dive straight into it. Tebogo, are things getting better when it comes to men and them opening up?
We see an improvement from the men reaching out, and yes, men and mental health is a huge concern in our country, you know, in terms of how it affects a lot of men. And we getting a lot of, when we see stats, we are 5 times likely to die by suicide than our female counterparts. So this, when I look at this, that this speaks to the challenges that men are going through on a daily basis and without having a voice. So we are seeing an improvement, and that is also motivating to see that men are actually now realizing that mental health is important.
It is great that men are beginning to see it. In the video, Given spoke about how culture is in men reaching out and seeking help. Is this something that you also see, you know, in the work that you do? Is culture really being a barrier?
Well, let me answer you by saying definitely it is a barrier, one of the barriers in terms of men reaching out. And this, I would say that this happens unconsciously, because, for example, if you were to take a 6-year-old girl, little girl, and they hit themselves on the leg, what would be your response? Sorry, princess, you know, I hope they hit. But if it's a little boy the same age as the girl that's 6 years old and they hit themselves, we would say our response would be an unconscious one as well. You're now becoming a man. So you see this, we normalize pain at a very young age, whereas we don't say, look, sorry boy, you know, you hurt yourself, it's quite painful, you know. So this is done unconsciously. So culture does have a huge role as well in terms of how we see males or male masculinity or men talking about pain or describing how pain looks like. So that it is evident on the cause as well.
And then KG spoke about a lot of pressure on men to be providers. Is this also something that a lot of men call in about? The pressure that they are, the stress that they are under because of this societal pressure that men must be providers, or as we say culturally, indoda must.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I can say is that they don't present it in the context of us discussing it now to say I'm getting a lot of pressure, you know. Some of them, if I can just give you an example, would make it a conversation to say, look, I've lost my job, you know, I don't feel I've been heard, you know, now my wife is telling me that I must not finish food in the fridge, or my children are telling me that the food in the fridge is for lunchbox. So that's how they would introduce this topic of, now I'm getting pressure, you know, as a man, and how do I really now ask for help? So they present it, but they don't show it in a clear way. You just have to read it along the conversation to say, no, this is a lot of pressure that this man is experiencing. And some of it, the pressure shows itself in bullying, where in an incident I had a client who wanted to take their lives because they've been bullied at work, So you see there's also work pressure. And now they were asking me about, will their funeral cover pay for take care of their family in the event that they take their lives? So that is another way of seeing that this man is going through a lot of pressure.
Okay, no. And you mentioned bullying. I would imagine that this is something a lot of men may be facing in the different spaces that they find themselves operating in. But on that, are men opening up about being bullied in the workplace and places like that?
It's tricky. The reason I'm saying that it's tricky is because of when you're a child, you are able to be aware that somebody is bullying you. But now, when you are now old, there's this expectation, like you were saying earlier on, that I'm a man now. So this can be hidden in a form of, it's not bullying, it's just boys play or men play, So it becomes tricky on how do we identify it as this is bullying that's taking place, or actually this is just men, big boys being boys. I think there's a saying that says boys being boys. So it's hidden under that context. It's, that's not a major thing. It's just boys being, don't be emotional about it. So those are some of the stigmas that are tricky to actually identify when someone speaks about bullying. So they can't put it in a context that you and I would understand. But when you ask more questions, that's when you see, no, actually this individual or this male is experiencing bullying, and that's when the education comes to effect to say, what do you understand about bullying? More and more people are realizing and learning more about that men can be bullied. It's not only children that are bullied, even females can be bullied. So it's not just only males only.
What can parents do to teach specifically their boy children so that it's never really going to be mistaken for a case of it's just boys being boys? I think bullying does really happen a lot, as a child is growing up. And if it's normalized, they won't realize what it actually is until we educate them.
It's quite, when I put it in the context of that a lot of households run female-headed, there are no male figures. So what parents can do, if it's in the instance of the household, there's no uncle or there's no male, a role model, the mother can just connect them with community leaders that are around the community. Say, man, speak to Uncle Tebogo. Ask him, what challenges are you experiencing at school? So this is also to put it in a context that it's not biased. When remember, because naturally females are naturals. So when there's danger, they are only going to nurture. But now there's some teachings that the male aspect can introduce in terms of, let's say you've got a young boy who's actually bullying other kids. How do you deal with that? So as a male figure, you are able to direct it to say, okay, I see you've got a lot of strength. Have you ever tried boxing? That's moving them to rechannel where they are bullying, to say, look, okay, I can see you're a boxer. Have you done boxing? Have you played rugby? So that requires a lot of collaboration. Parents can seek help and ask for help, even calling on the helplines to say, okay, how do I guide my young boy or my young son? That's finding also role models, because as much as this can be done, we've got households that are female-headed, but there are role models in our communities that we can connect with. So that's the advice I can give to parents, who've got children who are bullied and also who are showing signs of being bullies themselves, to say, how do we reconnect and conversate about it?
Statistics show that women suffer from depression, but more men die by suicide. Given mentioned in the video that guys have a lot of friends, but they're never really talking about the difficult things going on in their lives. What's your experience been just around men having big circles but not having deep circles?
It's quite interesting, because a lot of men, when we look at also where they spend their time at soccer matches, they spend their time at taverns or pubs. And those hours, they can spend literally 8, 6, 7 hours. And the place, this is a safe space, right, for men. But that's not where the deep conversations are taking place, That's the conversations are just basic to say, we're focusing on the soccer match. But you can pick up the smaller sides there, where you see one being angry that Kaizer Chiefs beat Pirates. It should be a normal thing to say, hey, Kaizer Chiefs has won. But once the other person starts to say become violent, that's when you should be able to pick up to say, no, something is not right here. So it's something that is a concern as well, to say men are go to public spaces or meet at restaurants or pubs, but they don't have deep conversations. That's where it speaks to the stats that you just mentioned about us being 5 times likely to die by suicide than our female counterparts, because females, they go to Stockfells, and when they go there, they drink tea, or maybe sometimes they have a bottle of wine, but they cry in those sessions, and once they go back home to their partners, they are healed. So we need to find a way of channeling, these spaces, or saying that let's over a game of chess, or a game of marabaraba. Let's talk, over a soccer match. Why are you so angry that Pirates lost? Is there something more to it than the actual game? So it's us being aware and maybe using these platforms. Like I'm keep saying that sports, it's something that connects a lot of men, rugby, and it's physical sports. So in those spaces, let's rather find a way that you can just touch on just one point to say, actually, how are you today? I've never checked on you before the match starts. So a lot of females do that. That's why you see females showing a lot of depression, but as well, reaching out more for help than us as male, because we meet in those spaces, but we don't talk. We just distract ourselves, or we avoid, because we've got a lot of avoidance. We avoid sensitive topics. We avoid subject matters that are going to make us look like we are vulnerable or weak.
So I like how you bring in the idea of us going deeper in our conversation. I noticed you're angry just that your team lost. It seemed a bit deeper. In the video, KG mentioned something interesting about language. The language to talk about depression, to talk about stress, and them being worried that it might not come across the way they want it to come across. As counselors at SADC, how do you work around language barriers when it comes to having these discussions?
So the nice part at SADC, our counselors are trained and we speak all different languages. So we are able to cater, because as you can hear, someone, when you're speaking to them over the phone, you can hear that they might be struggling with constructing a sentence in English. That's when we also ask, which language are you comfortable in speaking? So the client will be like, no, actually, I'm comfortable speaking Venda, or I'm comfortable speaking isiZulu or Setswana. I'd be like, okay, would you like for me to get a counselor that speaks Setswana to give you a call, or would you like us to continue? So we are able to, because of these different cultures, we are able to engage the client, because we believe that when you speak a person's language, you speak to the heart, or their soul. But when we're speaking in, business language, you're speaking to the mind. So the key thing that we strive for is speaking to the person's heart, given our line of work, and when we're dealing with sensitive issues like men and mental health, or the broader perspective,
So we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we will explore something that you had spoken about earlier, about children growing without father figures in the home. Welcome back to Let's Talk Mental Health, a series brought to you by Masiviwe, a movement for mental health. We have been talking all things men and mental health. So, Tebogo, you mentioned earlier that a lot of children don't grow up in a household with their biological father, and there's a lot of absent fathers, or there's a lack of father figures in the lives of children. How does this affect the mental health of a young boy as he's growing up?
I think the evidence is right in front of our eyes. And what I mean by that is look at the cases that we have of GBV, look at our prisons, they're flooded. And who is the majority that has flooded our prisons? It's males. It's speaking to that there's a lot of anger, which is sometimes it's misdirected. And some of the people who are committing these crimes and this is not to excuse, there is no excuse for gender-based violence, just to put it out there. But if you get to the crux of the issue, maybe you ask a caller or a client to say, what led you to this? Majority would say, look, I grew up without a father. I don't know what it's like to be a man. What is the responsibility of a man? Some also even getting into marriages, they don't have the point of reference to say, what is a marriage supposed to be like? So the evidence shows itself in the challenges that we're having as a country, that these households certainly that have no child, no father figures or no role models, it will be evident in that the child's mental health would be affected because of they don't know how to associate the identity to say, this is how I carry myself, as a growing young man or as a teenager, this is who I speak to. So it does show that having a male figure in the house, it can have, positive impacts. But again, other households might have male figures who are now abusing, their counterparts, which is also would contradict to say, what is the role model of me being a male figure? So, but majority of these cases, I can say that it's evident that to have both parents, it's something that's positive, that helps in shaping a young man's mental health. If it doesn't happen due to whatever reasons, it's us looking at the role models within the community. Because I love the saying when it says that it takes a village to raise a child, which is quite, true to say no person is an island, no man is an island. You might not have a father figure in your house, but next door to you, in your community, there is definitely that individual. As KG was highlighting in the video, that he grew up without his father. He had to have some intense conversations with his mother to say, look, there's certain elements of me that are missing. And that's how he started connecting, with his father. So it does show that there's impacts if there's no male figure, to raise young men.
So let me ask this then. What are some practical tips that you would give to men watching who feel they are under a lot of stress and pressure? How would you tell them, or what would you tell them are some tips they can use to cope with the load?
I would start off to say, it's okay not to be okay. You're not alone in this. If you can allow me to borrow the words of Frederick Douglass when he said, it's easier to raise strong children than to repair broken men. I found that statement quite profound. And he was saying men are broken, but he didn't say it's impossible. It's just it's easier to raise strong children. So with that, I would like to say to men watching out there that hope is still available. Not all is lost. We just need to take the first step, of realizing when you're not okay, raise your hand. There are platforms, there are safe spaces where men can actually be vulnerable. Crying is not a sign of weakness, but we're just saying that there are safe spaces where you can cry to a friend, to a pastor, to a community member, to a community leader. There are spaces, or reaching out to helplines like SADC or Masiviwe. There are spaces where we can connect, and having these conversations, I think it opens up the platform for us to now taking those steps in changing or taking care of our mental health.
And how can men get in touch with SADC when they feel they are in crisis?
It's very simple and cost free, if I may put it that way. So our numbers is a toll-free number. It's 0800 567 567. We also can go through to our website, which is www.sadag.org, where we do have WhatsApp platforms where we can chat, and they will be chatting to a live counselor, not an AI or a robot. So they can reach out to those platforms if they don't feel ready to take a phone call, because a phone call is not easy. So let's start it off with a chat, and then we can take it from there.
Tebogo, thank you so much for taking some time out from your busy schedule. I can imagine that calls do not stop even when you are not there. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's all the time that we have for on today's episode of Let's Talk Mental Health, brought to you by Masiviwe, Men and Mental Health.